Hello, hello, JJ DiGeronimo here. I'm so honored you would take the time to join us. As you know, on Together We Seek, we bring together some extraordinary people that have been on their journey of self discovery to illumination. I'm currently working on 6 pillars to conscious awakening that have come to me through the guests of all the stages that it takes from really being burned out or in the dumps, or really at a place that you may not know where to go. And I believe Justin has been through each of those steps. So, Justin, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited to talk about your book, Sourcery, which is brand new and it has very specific rungs that you talk about that helped you through the stages of your awakening. So, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's great to be here, there, everywhere. Magic of the
Everywhere,
internet.
right?
The
Everywhere.
magic of the
Yeah.
internet.
So I love all your rungs in your book, and we're not going to go through all of them because I feel like there's a lot of benefit of reading through the struggles and the journey and all the humor that you incorporate in your book, which is just such a great read. But I think I want to jump into one of the latter rungs, which is the difference between instinct and intuition.
Yeah, that's that, and that's an important one because people use those words interchangeably, but they're very different things. So, I kind of give an example in the book. Instinct lives in the gut, and intuition lives in the heart. And instinct can serve a great purpose, but we actually rarely actually need it. It is a fear-based instinctual kind of reactionary. It's more of a reactionary thing that we need in times of to save us, and we needed it more before, and when we were kind of in the caveman dweller days, and to be on alert. But these days, the tiger that we've been on alert now is now the coworker or in-law, and these things that we think are, like they give us the same reaction as a tiger would give. Some people's mother-in-laws gives them the same guttural instinctual reaction that a tiger would. And it's extremely important to know how to turn that off and to understand that there's no actual threat there. It's what we perceive. But I kind of give the example of if you're walking home from work, and there's a car that approaching, and you see a gun hanging out the window. This is an instinctual moment. You have to react in that moment, jump into the bushes, get away. Danger is coming. And so after a moment like that, you know the problem is with so many people and with trauma is so misunderstood, is that instinct now gets turned up. And so now that same person on their way home from work is going to be looking at every car on the way home, and jumping into the bushes at random times, and reacting to things that aren't necessarily there. And then maybe they get home and they don't want to leave again because their instinct now is turned up far too high, and because they're listening to this instinctual guttural voice that says there's danger, 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 when there's not any danger. There was, but it's gone. So our monkey mind and thoughts can just keep us reacting to situations of the past that aren't real. They're not there. And it extremely limits our lives, like it did me. I've had horrible anxiety my whole life. And the way to kind of get around that is to bypass the gut and get into the heart. And the way you do that is kind of get into the contact with your higher self, or that is source energy, the higher self. All these things, they're all, it's all the same thing. There's lots of names for it, but it is that energy that guides us. And source we have to have the same faith in our intuition as we have in our phones. So our phones, I like to give lots of examples, and technology is an amazing thing to use for this source energy. And it's you have your starting point, your ending point, and Google Maps or Apple, whatever you use, is going to map that route. And if someone told you to go a different route, you're not going to listen to them. You're gonna go with nope, I'm listening to Google or Apple Maps. And source has that whole picture, and if you listen, it will get you there in the quickest, easiest fashion. That's not to say if you take a wrong turn, it won't redirect you. It'll redirect you, and you could still get there, but the easier, softer way is better. And it'll also warn you when there's like speed traps or road closures. It's going to warn you, but you have to be in touch with it and know which voice is which. And the way to do that, intuition training is what I call it in the book. And it's just starting to ask questions. And you start to, first is very important to clear your mind, because the correct answer is not going to be obvious if your mind is not clear. So the breathing is the best thing. And I like to say, 4, 5, 6 breathing, and do that 5 times. So in 4, hold 5, out 6, and do that 5 times. Now your mind is clear, because that takes about 2 minutes of breathing. And at that point, you're ready to ask questions. And, a big one, but you have to listen. When you ask the question, it's going to answer you before you even finish the question. And that's your answer. That's the easiest, softest way. But you can't get through and filter it through the monkey mind. And a lot of it is desiring a different answer, right? Like maybe it's a romantic relationship. Is this guy right for me? And you get an immediate no. That might not be what you want to hear, but that's the correct answer. And it's like, well, but maybe that's not, that's just maybe a thought that maybe isn't no, it is. It's that answer comes in before you finish the question. That's your answer from the creator of everything.
I love
So
that.
yeah, that's what we need to follow. And that will kind of hack away at that instinctual voice that's telling us, to go other directions, or, it's how to lead like a great life, and to never make a wrong answer again, and just to
It's
always
hard
know the
though.
correct answer.
It's hard because you've kind of alluded to it, right? It's like clear your mind. Well, you have all these stories, you have all these emotional experiences, you have your instinct that kicks in, and sometimes your life situations drown you in the emotional security you've created. So, how do you get to a place where you're more open to listening, or how you allow yourself to get in that flow? Because I know this is a large part of your book, Sourcery.
Yeah, it's training. It is intuition training, and you have to do it every day, and do it multiple, and you can do it with just small things, like, you know hire, should I, see this person, should I go to this place? You have to get an understanding of what the yes or no answers mean, and you have to understand what the yes or no sounds like. It could be a feeling of yes, it could be a color, it could be the word yes. Like, you're not going to hear an audible. If you're hearing audible things, that's a different story. But it's going to be like something in your mind, and you're going to hear the word. There's a lot of different ways, but you have to ask questions that first the answer yes to, and then the answer no to. So you get an establishment of what those feel and sound like, and then you can start asking questions daily and just get in touch with it and start trusting it. And it can be very mundane things at first, and once you get a good signal going, now you can truly trust it. I had this crazy thing happen. The book was done. This was this year. It was probably, I think, in March or something, and I was eating steak, and I was just, I just live here with my dog. It's just her and I, and so I was eating, and I swallowed, and it kind of got stuck, but nothing unusual. It was just kind of like one of those situations where it's, the instinctual is just to swallow again, get it down. And that was the kind of the instinctual thing, but the intuition kicked in, and immediately there was just this extreme inner voice that said stop. Like, and it was like one of these moments, like, what's going on? And it said, you swallow and you die here on the floor. And so I was listening, and I had already established this communication, so I knew what voice this was. And so and then I asked, like, what to do, and it walked me through. Like, there was still air passage being able to come through, so I just kind of, like, inhaled air around the lodged steak, and then just shot it out. And I mean, I wouldn't be alive without without this this relationship I've created with my higher self and that intuition. So it's critically important. It can not only make your life better, but can save your life. And, like, bad things happen. And when, the whole thing is, why does God allow? Maybe they don't have to. Maybe, if we're this in touch with our inner self, it can guide us around these things, around people, around situations that might end up being really bad. So, I I don't think necessarily all these bad things have to happen. So it's critical. It's like the most important. We should be learning this as kindergartners, but it's just not taught, which is crazy.
Well, you know why it's not taught, right? They
Yeah.
don't want us on the planet living in this high frequency. So it
Hmm.
takes you and I and hundreds and thousands and millions of other light workers to go through the journey personally, to come out on the other side to be lighthouses, illuminating the path for many. And so I really appreciate the work that you've done. And I think you've kind of, for someone not knowing you, it sounds like the work sort of emerged for you quickly. But in reality, this has been a process for you. So what do you
Hmm.
think, like somebody listening, that wants to get to this higher consciousness, that wants to be in lockstep with their intuition? What are two or three things that they can start doing this week or this month, or maybe, in a few months from now, they can start to see a shift?
Well, there's never just one thing, right? I mean, if you're trying to get in touch with the intuition, it's important. That's why there's 13 rungs, and there's several of them, and there's a lot of things that kind of go in that give a clearer signal. If there's static in your signal, if there's a lot of trauma and things, that have undealt with, that have not been dealt with, and it's harder to get a clear signal. Trauma tends to sit in our frontal lobe, which is what makes us human. It's the conscious generator. Impulse control and judgment and personality. It's all here, and that's where trauma sits. It just clouds right here, and so it's really important to start you know healing. And I went over like the intuition training, and that's really good to start asking questions, and it's kind of in there, like how to do that. But there's more to it. There's 13, and there's a lot of things in there that's given me this signal. I realized that we're all in airplane mode, and it was one kind of dance with this bliss attack I had at one time that was like, oh, we're all in airplane mode, and there's a way to turn it off, and now and that's kind of where this all came from. And it's like, okay, we need a society off airplane mode. It's every child is off airplane mode, but something happens to the 7, 8, 9 where it gets turned on, and it just stays on. But we can turn it off. There's a way to turn it off, and once it's off, it just stays off, and it truly is. I mean, it's pretty amazing, to have that happen, and there is a way to do it, and there's a formula. The whole thing with the book is it's a map to healing and thriving and transformation and a better life, and it's feeling better, it's doing better, it's being more filled with joy, and it's out there and available, and there's just a lot to it that I couldn't possibly cover in 10 minutes. So but there is, it's there and it's available.
I love that. And I think for a lot of people, they're looking for the roadmap. I think a lot of folks have talked about a concept or an awakening or a particular frequency, but more importantly, even a particular modality. And I love the idea of your 13 rungs because you can almost jump in at any one and you can start what calls you most. Would you say, or
Mhm.
do you feel like you have to go in order?
No, I've made it real fluid.
Mm.
I've used to have a lot of drug and alcohol issues, and that's what kind of came to me, is like I needed to make this, like organize it, and the 12 steps of AA, like moving forward is good, but moving up is better, because a bird has a better perspective on things than a worm. So I just kind of, that's where I went with the whole rung thing. And but you don't, and that's the thing, is like it's not, the AA 12 steps is extremely rigid. 1, 2, you do not jump, you do not go ahead, but this is like something that's very fluid, and can jump around, and the level of importance depends, is very subjective. There's some things that may come very natural to people, there's other things that need focus and attention, and so the levels of importance are not necessarily based on 1, 2, 3. It's that's they're all just fluid and in there, and it just depends on what you struggle with more, and that's what deserves more focus.
Yes, I love that. And I noticed that. And I think it's fantastic because I do think more people need a roadmap and they need to start with what's calling them the most. And so I think the rungs are fantastic. But I'm curious how you came up with the name Sourcery. I love that. And, I know a little bit of behind it now getting into the book. So tell us a little bit about how you spell it and why you spell it and how you go about it that way.
Yeah, so it's sorcery is spelled with a U. So source, it is that source energy. That is what we're connecting to. That is what turns off the airplane mode. That is what changes our lives. That is that intuition. It's called many things, and but it is a field of information that can be tapped into like a keg at any time. And it's what I had with this bliss attack. It was these downloads and this field of information that is there and is available and at all times. I like to say explaining source energy to people is like explaining water to a fish. It would be pretty hard to explain water to a fish, and I don't think a fish would really understand. It's the substance that surrounds you. You breathe because you move because the air, you wouldn't be here because without water, right? And that it's the same thing. It is surrounds us. It is we just can't see it. It's not there, uh, you know, but it is there. And so sorcery, it distances itself from magic and robes and Harry Potter and all that stuff, and so it's you're unfortunately it's not a book. You're not going to be able to necessarily like turn your roommate into a frog. Unfortunately, I can't guarantee that. I don't know, maybe you've got some powers after this that's extra special, but it's about it's about healing and thriving and using that source energy and becoming a sorcerer. A sorcerer is someone that is just in charge of their emotions and is living a joyful life. I always like to say I'm a little bit Deepak and a little bit Tupac, right? So there's that, that's the two sides of us. It's the divine and the shadow. And the divine is the sorcerer, that's the responder, and the shadow is the reactor. So it's about becoming greater than that reactionary shadow character, because you are not the shadow. The shadow is, you are the awareness of the shadow. So it is, the sorcerer is the responder, the shadow is the reactor. So that's the whole idea behind sorcery and source energy. Yeah.
I love that, Justin. And I love the fact of how you explain shadow work because I've had a lot of people, I've worked on my own shadow work. I've cleaned out a lot of closets. I'm still in progress, I would say, but I've done a lot of the heavy lifting to raise my frequency, which you call vibration. And I feel like sometimes we think we are the shadow. And I think recognizing that your viewpoint, may determine the shadow or determine the source. And a changing your viewpoint is often so strategic, but can take years to do. And I often turn to light workers, healers, and mystics to help me sometimes dig through things that I've had challenges digging through myself. So who have you relied on to sort of help you raise the valve, turn off, airplane mode and really live within this aware based consciousness?
Yeah, I had before the bliss attack, probably a couple months before, I had a shaman come in and just help me with like my 2 weeks with him was more sufficient than 20 years of AA Christianity therapy, like just, and it just completely changed things, and it wasn't even that much. And from then on, that was the seed that was planted, and then from then I did, I'm now the seeker, and I'm looking out for things, and I read a lot of books, listen to books, watch a lot of good stuff. There's an app called Gaia. It's basically Netflix for consciousness, and so there's all kinds of amazing stuff on there. So the key is just to constantly be learning and growing. We are infinite beings, therefore we have infinite room to grow. I like to call myself a spiritual Sherpa because it's you can't get to Everest without the use of a Sherpa, but a Sherpa is also not going to carry you. It is your journey. But when it comes to spirituality, there's no summit. So it's I was once a patient and now I'm a physician, and it's that whole thing of iron sharpening iron. Like one person helping the other, and it's a lot of fun for me to assist now that I have that ability. It's never good to jump ahead if you're still a patient. Don't think you're a physician yet. It takes time, but it's really exciting to be at that point for sure. And shadow work is that's a big deal. That's a big deal for sure.
I love that. And, I sort of feel like this is why I've created the podcast Together We Seek, is because these are people that I turn to sharpen my saw. Back to Stephen Covey years ago. But I really find that our journeys are so awesome and they can be tools for other people. And people like you that actually write down their journey and provide a roadmap for others is incredibly spectacular. So I'm so honored you joined us here. What is on the horizon for you?
That's a big question. Well, thank you. I don't. I'm at this point. I'm just kind of this year. I felt was just creating awareness about the book and who I am and everything. And I've taken on some clients now as that spiritual Sherpa kind of thing, and helping people one on one, which is a lot of fun. I hope to eventually get to kind of more of a macro level. And I'd like to call myself lots of things: hope dealer, mystical comedian. Like there's all kinds of names I have. And I used to do stand-up comedy, and I no longer do that or want to do it because I don't want to go on stage at 10 o'clock with a bunch of drinking, and I also don't want to just make people laugh. I want to make them think and feel too. Think, feel, laugh. So it's something new. It does not out there, like it's to go on tour and start at 6 p.m. and no alcohol, and start with a meditation and then do stand-up philosophy. That doesn't exist. So there are things that I have in the future that I'd love to work towards, and I want to move towards it. This is very, very beginning, which is exciting, but I really hope to do that. I maybe do a Sourcery 102. I'm already at that thinking, but I have to train to be a shaman first. There's a South American training course, and it would be a lot of fun to go there and write. The next level has to be a level up, right? And I'm not a trained shaman. That would be the next level up. So I've already got in line and things lined up, and it's just see where it goes, really. But it's fun. It's exciting. I like it. I'm following my bliss.
I
That's
love that. And I love that you can articulate it, because I really feel like once you start articulating it to others, even if it isn't even so yet, the fact that you bring it out and verbalize it is definitely a catalyst. So I believe you will do all of the things that you mentioned in good time. And I hope you come and visit me in Vermilion, Ohio. And we do your comedy slash thinking and being and meditating with a group of people, because I really believe that the work that I'm doing is fabulous, but we need more men at the table. We need more men talking to men about how do you tap into your consciousness? How do you tap into this genuine connection of unseen things that really help guide you in a way that allows you to be in your flow and really illuminate the path for yourself and others? So I just want to thank you so much, Justin, for joining us. I look forward to seeing you in the community, and I am thrilled to share your story with my network.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, it was great to be here. Aho, loved it. Anytime. You're great.
I love it. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll see you again here next time.